In this video, I have a look at how flash duration can freeze movement.
AdoramaTV presents Take and Make Great Photography with Gavin Hoey.
Hello, I'm Gavin Hoey and you're watching AdoramaTV, brought to you by Adorama, the camera store that has everything for us photographers. Now, when it comes to flash, one of my favourite things to do with it is to use it to freeze action. It's down to something called flash duration. And although this isn't a technical guide to flash duration, that's what we're going to explore in this video. And we're going to explore it by banging two glasses together and photographing the end result. So let's start with perhaps the most obvious question, which is, why use flash at all? Why not just use the ambient light? Surely that would work. Well, it might. Let's have a look. So I'm on f8, I'm on ISO 400, and my shutter speed in here with the video lights are quite bright, so that's giving me a 1/100th of a second shutter speed. Okay, that's not enough to freeze the action. It's not even close. I could adjust my ISO and I could adjust my aperture to get a faster shutter speed, but those would both have consequences I might not want. So the real way to increase my shutter speed is to add more light. Now, if I was to double the light I've got in here, I could double my shutter speed to 2/100th of a second. If I want to go to 4/100th of a second, I'd need to double that again, so that would be 4 times as much light. If I wanted to go to 8/100th of a second, I'd need to double that again, so I would have 8 times as many lights in here at 8/100th of a second. If I wanted to go to 16/100th of a second, I would need 16 lights in here. You can quickly see the problem. I'd end up with a room full of lights and it would be rather bright. So what I need is a light source that produces an awful lot of light in a very, very short period of time. And that's where flash comes in. Well, not all flashes are exactly the same, and I'm talking about the modern style of flashes rather than the older studio heads. But basically how these work is really simple. The more light you need, the longer the flash stays on. The less light you need, the shorter the flash fires. How short? Well, this is a really good bit. It could be as short as maybe 10,000th of a second, 15,000th of a second, or even less. And it's that tiny period that the flash fires that freezes the action. That's why they're so good. There's only one thing you really need to know as far as your camera settings go, and that is the camera's flash sync speed. You might need your manual to discover what that is, but basically it is the fastest shutter speed that your camera can work and see flash without a weird black line appearing across the screen. Now on my camera, that is a 250th of a second. That's in an ideal world. The world isn't ideal, so I'm actually going to work a little bit below that and set my camera's shutter speed to 2/100th of a second, and it won't move from that. But I want to be absolutely clear, 2/100th of a second is not what freezes the action. In fact, if I put my camera into shutter priority mode and I set it to 2/100th of a second and we don't fire the flash, we just take a shot without flash and we bang these together even gently, it's always going to come out blurry when I do that, because 2/100th of a second isn't even remotely close enough to freeze the action. So the shutter speed doesn't freeze the action. All it does is open up the shutter in the camera so it can see the flash. It's the flash that freezes the action. But we need to make sure that the camera only sees flash. So let's switch to M for manual mode. And I'm going to set in my shutter speed at 2/100th of a second. I'm on ISO 100, f11. Now I'm going to take a picture without the flash turned on, and when I do, what I end up with is a completely black image. That's perfect. That means I've overpowered the ambient. Our settings on the camera are such that the ambient light can't be seen. That means it'll only see the flash when it fires, and remember, the flash fires for a tiny period of time. That's what freezes the action. So what I've got is the flash behind a piece of tracing paper. It's set to full power and I've metered the camera and set it accordingly. Let's just take a test shot first of all, just to make sure that all works. And as you can see, yep, we get a fine picture, but does it freeze action? Okay, well, there's only one way to find out, and that's actually to take the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set these swinging. Here we go. And as soon as they bang into each other, I'll press the button. Here we go. Yeah, that was pretty messy, and the end result looks okay until you go a little bit closer. And then you can really start to see how the flash duration, the period of time the flash lasted, was not fast enough to freeze the action. There's definite blurring and streaking. So let's drop the flash down to a quarter power. That means it's producing less light, should stay on for a shorter period of time and give us a sharper picture. Well, let's find out. Let's give these a swing. Here we go. Okay, so once again, from a distance, that looks pretty good. And looking in closer, it looks better, definitely better, but there's still a little bit of streaking. It's not quite as sharp as I would like. So let's drop the flash down even lower. We'll go down to 1/16 of its full power. That should give us a much sharper shot because the flash has to fire for a much shorter period of time. Okay, well, let's find out. Here we go. Well, I got wet, so that was a good splash. And looking up close, yeah, that's really good. Nice and sharp, really looking how I want it to be. Okay, well, let's just try this once more. Let's go even lower down than that. So let's go down to a 64th of its full power. And again, we'll give this a good swing. Here we go. And the end result is very, very sharp. But what I've had to do is I've had to compromise my camera settings. I'm now at an ISO that is much higher than I would rather be. And given that in mind, I reckon the best result was the previous one. So with that in mind, I think I've established the correct settings to freeze action for this shot. And remember, it will change from picture to picture. So, well, let's fill these glasses back up and take some more shots. Okay, well, there we go. I think that's probably enough of those pictures. We should have some good ones in there somewhere. All I need to do now is just get my favourite picture into Photoshop and do a little bit of cloning, I suspect, on removing things. But before I do that, I think I better do some mopping up first of all.
Don't forget to check out Adorama's latest contest and your chance to win amazing prizes.
Now you might think I'm in for a long, hard slog, cloning out all those little tiny bits of wire. Well, I am, but fortunately it can be done really quickly. Let's have a look. So yeah, you can't have floating glasses without them being attached to something, of course, and we need to remove these little bits of fishing line. So to do it, I'm going to use the spot healing tool, and I'm going to come down with a brush that's a little bit bigger than the wire, but not too much. About that, that's fine. Now I could spend time just carefully drawing over each and every part and it'll work okay, but there's a much quicker way of working. And the quicker way of working is to click once at one end, go to the other end that you want to remove, hold the shift key and click again. And it'll draw a dead straight line between those 2 points. Click once, go to the other end, hold shift and bingo, you're done. And I can really quickly work my way around, clicking at one end, tidying up the other end, and so on. So we can just tidy up these little bits here, click at one end, and tidy up. See, I missed a bit there, but that's okay. And it's a remarkably fast process. So fortunately, straight lines are really quick and simple to remove in Photoshop. So that's the fishing wire removed. What about the colour? Now the colour I've got on screen is really the colour it was, but I want to add just a little bit more flourish to my effect. So let's have a little look. Now, of course, I could have done this at the beginning whilst I was processing this in RAW, but here in Photoshop CC, of course, I can bring Camera Raw up as a filter anytime I like. And what I want to do is just change the white balance ever so slightly. I'm going to bring it down just a little bit cooler, like that. Not so much that it affects the colour of the reds, but just adds a mild blue colour. Now, to really make that colour pop, I'm going to come down to the vibrance and the saturation and pull them up as well, and that should really make all the colours in the picture look a lot more powerful. And there you go, there is my final picture completed. Well, hopefully you found this information about flash duration really useful and you've learnt a technique along the way. Now, if you want to see more videos from myself and the other amazing presenters here on Adorama TV, you know what you've got to do? You've got to click on the subscribe button. I'm Gavin Hoey, thanks for watching.
Do you want great looking prints at low cost? Be sure to visit our easy to use online printing service. Adorama Pix has professionals who treat your images with the utmost care that you can count on. For a quick turnaround on photos, cards, or albums, use AdoramaPix.com.